Speaking out of Akron, Ohio, representing Team Popping the Boys, the headline god, Jeremy Lambert, and his co-host, speaking out of Atlanta, Georgia, representing more than one royal family, the king of indie viewing, Stephen Jensen. And this is the Spotlight on Fightful.
Welcome everyone to the Spotlight here on Fightful. I'm Jeremy Lambert, that's Stephen Jensen, and shout out as always to Big Dick MLJ for the intro. It is Thursday, February 26th, and we got plenty to talk about in the world of professional wrestling and everything in between. Jensen, how you doing today?
I'm doing good, Jeremy. I'm doing good. We always talk a little traditional sports here on the show before we get started. By far the biggest thing that's happened since the last time we talked, Team USA, men's and women's hockey, gold medals. Very, very cool. I woke up and watched the men's gold medal game because it started at like 8 a.m. or whatever. Yeah. On whatever was Sunday morning, I think.
Yep.
So yeah, that was great. I've thoroughly enjoyed that. Jack Hughes, very cool. Like that's something I'll remember probably my whole life, I would imagine. That was a really big moment. And I know we talked last week about how I really wasn't following the Olympics, which is true. That was the only event that I really watched the entire Olympics, but it was it was history, so it was very cool to see. So that was cool. It had been like almost 50 years, right? It was like 40 something, like 45 years or something, 44
1980.
years.
Yeah, 1980 was the Miracle on Ice, and that was the last time that they won the gold medal. So yeah, 1980.
Yeah, it reminded me a lot of D2, classic. Team USA going all the way. Yeah. I would imagine they played they probably went around the locker room before overtime, and they pointed at all the players and said, "Who are you?" And they stood up and said their name and where they're from, and ducks fly together. When the roosters are crowing and the cows are spinning circles in the pasture, ducks fly together.
Ducks fly together, yeah.
Yep. Right. So
they did this, honestly.
That would be the greatest. That'd be the most viral video of this entire year. Would be if there was footage of Team USA doing the ducks fly together speech all together. It'd be like if they came out and like they had changed jerseys and everything too. But anyway, that was great. That was a great moment. I was very happy that I woke up and I watched that and got to witness that live. And good to see everyone in the chat as well. We see y'all here. We're gonna talk about wrestling here shortly. A lot of good wrestling stuff going on. We're gonna be getting to. Do you have any thoughts? I'm sure you've talked about it since it's happened, but any additional thoughts or anything on? Because I know you're a big hockey fan, obviously, so that was always probably pretty cool for you to see.
Yeah, I was obviously up watching it. I'm not gonna lie, like I don't have a ton of like American hockey pride, honestly. I used to. Now it's just kind of tough to have any American pride. And I like my team. As people know, I'm an Avs fan, and most of our good players were on Team Canada. Unfortunately, they didn't do too well in the gold medal game. They were kind of a reason why they ended up losing. But yeah, most of my favorite players played for Team Canada. So like it was cool that USA won, and for people who like USA hockey, like good on them. A lot of those players support a office that I don't support, and so it's just tough for me to be like, yeah, go USA when I don't align with a lot of them.
No, I completely understand that, and I generally stay out of politics just in general on this show because I feel like people tune into this like to get away from politics. But yeah, I mean, it's very, my own personal opinion. Yes, it's very straight. Like I was very proud to watch that happen because like it's been so long. It was a very cool moment. It's something I'm always going to remember seeing them win that game. But like it is incredibly weird seeing Kash Patel partying with them and like all that stuff. Like I can talk for days and days and days about my actual thoughts people like Cash Patel and Pam Bondi and all this kind of stuff. Like I obviously have my own personal opinions on this stuff, but I just try to keep that separate, and talk about wrestling to the best of my ability. I know it's tied in with the Olympics. It was tied in with, us winning the gold medal and all that stuff. But there was also something cool, at least in my opinion, about just kind of the way that, I really like Jack's speech after he scored that goal. Like, it was just like to see a guy who's in his mid-20s. Now, I don't know much about Jack Hughes. I don't know much about really anything about any of the players individually because I don't follow hockey. But just seeing a moment like that, it's just been so long that America's done something like that in the sport of hockey. And I've seen the movie Miracle, and obviously I'm a big D2 fan. There's a lot of parallels there with that story. It was just cool to see. But I get, trust me, y'all, I totally get the frustration with politics. I get it.
Yeah, I think for casual fans, like I've seen them seem to enjoy it more than I guess people like me who we have a team that we root for, and I just kind of I put the Avs over Team USA. Like, I like Jack Hughes, he's a very good player. I don't know him personally, or I don't follow too much of him. I know he's dating Tate McRae, or was dating Tate McRae.
I don't know who that is. Is she an athlete or a singer or something?
She's a singer. I've never heard one of her songs. I just know she is a singer, and yeah, that's it. So like, I know the players, but I'm not gonna be like excited that Jack Hughes won a gold medal. Like, all right, cool, you're on a. The Avs and the Devils don't really have a rivalry. Quinn Hughes, that's his brother. He plays for the Minnesota Wild, and the Avs and the Wild do have a rivalry. They play tonight, actually. And am I like, all right, cool, Quinn Hughes got a gold medal. Like, that doesn't excite me. Like, Brock Nelson got a gold medal. He's a Avs player, so I was happy that he got a gold medal. But yeah, I think casuals enjoyed it more, and I'm speaking for myself. Casuals probably enjoyed it more than me. Me personally, I'm rooting for my team because that's who I want to succeed over a country filled with players that aren't on my team. And I think the Stanley Cup means more than like a gold. Like a Stanley Cup just like means more than like a gold medal type of thing,
No, I know what you mean. And also I get it too from like, if like, American football was in the Olympics, for instance, and it was like Aaron Rodgers and like Jordan Love, like all these guys, like all the players that I despise as a Vikings fan are like the ones like winning the gold and everything. I'd be like, like of all people, like you had to be you to be able to do this. But no, it's all. Oh, also, by the way, sidebar before I completely forget to bring this up because you're an NBA fan, I have had unusual success lately with my NBA picks. So I have to give a little credit to the NBA, the post All-Star break. I was getting destroyed pre All-Star break, but the last few days have been very, very good to me. So we're looking for people to hit 3-pointers, Jeremy. The people I choose need to hit 2 3-pointers. They have to hit 2 threes in one game, and my guys have been doing it the last few nights. So hopefully that continues tonight. I got something cooking right now that'll be starting in like 10 minutes. So that's sports right now, everyone. Baseball's back a little bit, kind of spring training. I've been following that. Looking forward to that season. I'm looking forward to the World Baseball Classic too. Speaking of the Olympics, that's like the baseball Olympics. That's gonna be awesome. I'm really looking forward to that. And then the actual season starts not long after. So we'll have baseball. The NFL stuff will never end because we'll have draft talk coming up soon. I thought it was so funny, by the way. This is the last thing I'll say about sports because I know you want to hear us talk about wrestling. And there's plenty of wrestling to talk about this week. No interview this week, so I added some extra topics. We had a lot of wrestling. Oh, now I've lost my train of thought. Who is I about to talk about?
You were about to talk about
NBA.
Something sports-wise.
It was NBA. It was no, NFL.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yes. This is an obscure reference, but now I remember what I was going to say. I saw that Kwesi Adolfo-Mensah, who is the former general manager of the Minnesota Vikings, who has had notoriously bad draft picks for the most part in his like 4 years of being the GM of the Vikings. He recently just signed a new deal with the 49ers. And I just think it's really funny because they've already come out and said they don't really know what his role is going to be yet. He has like a relationship with some of the people in the front office, but they have specifically said they will figure out his role after the draft. I was like, you just hired some guy onto your squad who's so bad at drafting that you just hired him and don't want him involved until after the draft. So anyways, I thought that was kind of funny. I turned on Kwesi pretty hard over the last year. So I was a big fan of his up until recently, but not so much anymore. So that's all my sports talk for you guys all today here on the Wrestling Podcast.
Did you bet on the coin toss, Jensen, for the Super Bowl?
No, I bet on the coin toss last night for MJF, though. I knew that was going to land heads. I knew that was going to be heads. Right when he said he was taking heads, we're going to definitely talk about that. I bet on that coin toss. Bets were voided on that, though, because of the rigging. So, no, I don't know if the apps I use even have the option to.
Yeah, you don't have like the traditional kind of. You have like player fantasy apps more than anything.
Yes. Now, that said, I do have the option to. There are some more lines now that I can actually take on these apps here in Georgia, but they're just not big enough. The risk isn't worth the reward enough. Like the stuff that I see on there for the most part is like, I have a buddy, for instance, who I got together with some of my friends for the Super Bowl, and like he put down, I think on the game, he put down $900 worth of bets on the Super Bowl, and he could have won up to $1,000. So like technically a total of, right around 2,000 would come back to him off of $900 worth of bets. Whereas for me, it was like, I could have won the same amount of money off of betting, $50. Potentially, you know what I mean? Because he's betting stuff, like a lot of people are, you're betting stuff where like the odds are really in your favor. Like he's the kind of guy who he'll see a line, and there's a lot of people that are like this. You'll see a line that's like plus 300, and you're like, okay, I'll put $300 on that to try to win back 100 because it's a safe bet. But you have to put down a lot of money to get very little back in comparison. I'm more the type of person where I'm going to look for the guy who's minus 300 is what I meant just a second ago. Bet 300 to win back 100. Other way around, I'm looking for the opposite of that type of stuff. I'm looking for more of like a long shot or a parlay, something like that, where I don't have to bet as much money, but the return. Here's a great example. The last 2 nights, I'll just be full transparency. I'll tell you exactly what I did the last 2 nights. Last 2 nights, I bet $30 the first night and won 210. The second night I bet 35 and won 375. So that's more what I'm talking about. So there you go, everyone.
I'm glad you're doing
that. That is not gambling advice, by the way, to anybody.
No, not gambling advice. We don't do that.
I need to finish the story. In the WWE, the story never finishes.
AJ Styles' story is finished. Stephen Jensen officially retired. And he retired at Royal Rumble, but this past Monday, they held a big tribute for him. Did you go to this show?
No, dude, that's a whole other. We could have made a whole spotlight on the price of, because not even just the price of going to the shows in Atlanta. It's the parking is as expensive downtown as it is to get a ticket. I mean, it's completely unaffordable unless you have a ride or a parking pass or get a free ticket at this point, as far as I'm concerned. But anyway, no, I was not in attendance.
Okay. Well, AJ Styles did retire, and a tribute video set to Creed, as every tribute video should be set to. And a lot of people were there, like Good Brothers, Frankie Kazarian, Abyss, Shinsuke, the MFTs, Tama and Tonga were there. So it's a great celebration. And he now left his jacket and his gloves in the ring. He said he wanted to leave them in the ring in Georgia. He talked briefly about his career and talked about how he wants to be a dad and he's going to be a full-time dad. And he thanked his wife and his family and everything for always supporting with him and sticking with him. And then The Undertaker came out and said that he was going to be inducted into the 2026 Hall of Fame. Yes, AJ Styles is not going to AEW. Sorry to ruin that fantasy for everybody. I guess it's not my fault. AJ Styles ruined that fantasy for everybody.
Yeah, and then I saw he went on Talking Shop and like double down confirmed that he is done. I also think I saw something about, is it true that he's a producer already? He signed some sort of producer deal with them, or is that just a rumor?
I don't know if he necessarily signed like a producer deal. So what he said is he's still going to be working with WWE and he's going to be like helping out the young talent. What AJ said has forever, dating back to 2020, because I remember covering this stuff in 2020, is that he wanted to be a scout for WWE once he retires. So I think that's going to be kind of the stuff that he does, is he's going to be sort of like a scout and again just give advice to the next generation. I don't think he's going to be like a full-on coach. I don't think he's going to be a full-on producer, because producer is going to require like traveling and everything as well, and obviously he doesn't want to do any of that. I think this is just my interpretation of things. I don't have any full insight. I'm just kind of putting pieces together here. I think at least to start, he's going to be similar to what Sean Waltman does. And for those that don't know, Waltman does a lot of coaching through like Zoom calls and everything with the Evolve and the LFG and like that WWE ID talent. That's Waltman's role. I feel like at least to start, that's going to kind of be AJ's role. I could be completely wrong on that. That's just my impression of things.
So, and that makes sense too, because that was something I was confused about, because he was pretty big on his speech on Monday about wanting to be a dad again. And then I was like, if you're going to be, what was the point? I mean, obviously there's a difference between traveling all those days and having to wrestle in the ring versus just traveling and writing the shows, but he'd still be on the road roughly the same amount of time as a producer than he would a full-time talent. So, that was what I was confused about. So that makes more sense. So if that's kind of the route they're going, more of like the Waltman role. I don't think he was in the ring, but our boy Ernest the Cat Miller was in attendance at Raw too. I saw some backstage photos of him with some of the wrestlers and stuff too. So shout out to the Cat, the greatest. Yeah. So it made sense that like if AJ is actually done, which it sounds very, very clearly that's his intention, is to not wrestle anymore. It is the wrestling business. We always got to say never. Like I feel like the thing with AJ, and the reason I don't like it being, I think I've said this on the podcast or on our show before, I don't like him definitively saying it's done like Cena has, just because AJ never had that physical decline. And I get that's a big reason why he wants to retire now. He wants to end on top before he has the decline, which is completely respectable. I think more athletes should actually kind of, take that approach, especially in pro wrestling. Pro wrestling is obviously the outlier of all quote unquote sports, because, guys can continue to do this really as old as they want. Guys will, everybody can, you can potentially have a really long career, and the more medicine and technology keeps getting better, you can wrestle into your 50s and your 60s and stuff. And, if you're a draw, you can stick around. But, for AJ to kind of recognize, okay, now is, he has, it sounds like he had some nagging injuries. I think his neck had been bothering him. That's never good, So, I mean, he's doing what he thought was best for him and his family. And I think that's completely respectable. And there's professional athletes too that have, left in their prime. And I don't even blame them for that either. There's been plenty of NFL players, especially running backs and wide receivers. You make big money. You play for a handful of years and you get out with your health. And that's completely I don't hate on that at all. So someone said AJ Styles is the new co-host of the Spotlight with Jeremy Sorry Jensen. Oh man, hey, if you guys can get AJ Styles on here, I couldn't blame you for replacing me. But yeah, AJ is the man. I've made it clear. I think he's one of the best of all time, especially for talking in ring work for sure. But like I said, the reason I don't like him saying he's done definitively is because he never had that decline, and he still is in really good physical shape. And they're going to get offered a lot of money to have one-off matches. And I also wouldn't blame AJ, a year from now, 2 years from now, 3 years from now, or whatever it is, if, and we can get into the politics of Saudi Arabia and everyone's thoughts on that too. We won't, but they are dishing out huge bags of money. And if a situation comes up, whether it be Saudi Arabia or WrestleMania or just some huge event, regardless of where it is, I would not blame AJ if he's still in really good shape a couple years from now to be like, you're going to give me $5 million to wrestle for 15 minutes. Like, how could you say no to something like that? If you're physically, talk about your family, you have to consider it. So it's just one of those things where I like that AJ is getting out when he is, because he knows himself and his body and his situation better than any of us do. So I got to respect that. But I also wouldn't blame him if he wrestled again at some point in the future. You know what I mean? I don't think that's what his intention is, to do that anytime soon, but it wouldn't, you know what I'm saying? Like, it wouldn't bother me at all if he came. It's the Cena thing, it'd bother me a little bit more because of just how the entire story of the last year was about it being his last year, and he will never go back on that. But for the same reasons, I wish you wouldn't have end capped it either. For the same reasons. So.
I don't think Cena's going to wrestle again. I don't think I think
either do I.
With the intention of not wrestling again. AJ, to his credit, I guess, yes, he left the gloves in the ring. Yes, he's going to go in the Hall of Fame. Even he said on Stephanie McMahon's podcast of, everyone comes back at least once, which kind of true. And he's like, what if my son becomes a wrestler and I want to do a tag team match with my son? Like, are people going to basically hold that against me type of thing? It's like, yeah, no, probably not. Like, completely understandable. If you are still good enough to go and you think you're good enough to go, you think it's a worthwhile thing to do, then no, you should be able to do that. So I would not be shocked to see AJ back. I do think it would most likely be a circumstance of he wants to team with his son or something to do with his family. I don't think, and this is could be me being naive, I don't think he's going to just take like Saudi money and, hey, let me go out here and wrestle. No offense to this person. I hope this is a compliment more than anything. Wrestle like Ethan Page or something like that. I don't think it's going to be to that level. I think if he does anything, it'll be because it's something to do with his family.
Sure. I think that makes sense as well. So, I'm a little disappointed that this is the end for AJ. Well, actually, I'm really disappointed, but that's just because I'm a fan, and I'm selfishly disappointed because I just feel like he still had a lot to offer. But like, for all the reasons I just mentioned before that, if he feels like it's time to get out, then they say that about MMA all the time. Also, like, if you even start considering retirement, it's time to just retire, because when you're like 1 foot in, 1 foot out on that, if you're 1 foot in, 1 foot out, and your opponent is all the way in, you're probably in for a bad time. And in pro wrestling, it's kind of like that. It's same but different, because in pro wrestling, you're relying on each other. You and your opponent are relying on each other to protect one another. So in that instance, it's more of, you can't be 1 foot in, 1 foot out when the other person's all the way in, because you might actually be a risk to your opponent, because you might not be protecting them because you're not all there, So, yeah, but yeah, AJ Styles, one of the best careers ever. I can't stress that enough. I don't say that lightly. I'm not just blowing smoke. he was the best wrestler outside of the WWE that had never wrestled there for quite a long time. I mean, like pretty much from the death of WCW until he debuted in the WWE finally. Like he was the man outside of the company. And then he had a decade-long Hall of Fame level career in the WWE. So, I mean, and I know that there's no real like first ballot Hall of Fame system or whatever for the WWE Hall of Fame, but this is about as close as you can get to just validating somebody as an unquestionable. I mean, technically, yes, it is a first ballot Hall of Fame. He literally just retired, and this is the first opportunity he'd even have to get in. So technically speaking, he's a first ballot Hall of Famer, but you guys know what I mean by all that. Like, because that's not a real thing in pro wrestling, but they're giving AJ that kind of honor because it's just that undeniable. Like, I don't think you can talk to one, listen, to each his own, but I'd be very suspect of somebody, literally anyone who calls himself a professional wrestling fan. If I ask them what they think about AJ Styles, the pro wrestler, if I think if anybody who actually calls himself a wrestling fan says anything, you don't have to be your favorite wrestler of all time. You don't have to say he's the greatest of all time. But like, I don't think anybody could say he was anything other than like a great pro wrestler. You can't say he sucked. Like you can never, no one with a straight face could ever say he never had bad matches. He had some of the greatest matches outside the WWE in the history of wrestling. He helped carry the Bullet Club during one of the Bullet Club eras that was at its most important. He had one of the best Royal Rumble debuts ever, multiple time WWE champion, beat Ambrose for the first title and then Jinder for the second title. And the Jinder title change was kind of out of nowhere too, because Jinder wasn't working. Brock didn't want to wrestle him, if you guys remember all that. And AJ was who they went with. They're like, well, they basically looked around the room and was like, well, who's the best person here then? And like they went with AJ, so like in the Undertaker's last match, there's the list goes on and on. And then, you hear about, how he is as a family man, as a dad, and all the good things people say about him. And, it just, he's a little bit out there. He's a little wacky. There's some stuff he said throughout the years that's a little head scratching. We're kind of like, yeah, I don't know if I agree with that, but I never feel like AJ is coming at anything with like a bad heart. I think he just has some different views. His education is a little bit different than, at least a little different than mine was. We don't agree on everything, but what I can definitely agree on is he's one of the best in-ring professional wrestlers I've ever seen in my life. And I've been watching wrestling almost my entire life.
No, I'm 100% with you on that, and I've said many times AJ got me back into wrestling after the WWE lull with everything, and then I just discovered AJ Styles. I was like, oh, this guy, he's pretty awesome, and then I just continued to follow his career. So yeah, 100% on that. Zeno Bauer saying who should induct AJ into the Hall of Fame? Balor? That was my first thought. Is Balor, but I don't know if like. Because I think Stephanie's going to be the headliner is the thing, and it's not going to be AJ, which would be a little disappointing. But
yeah,
also considering
WWE, I feel like the right move is AJ headlining. I think that's what most of the fans want. But I mean, it's Vince's daughter. I mean, it's like I get it. But
the inventor of women's wrestling, yeah. If AJ's the headliner, I think Cena would be good, because typically when you have the headliner, like the inductor is always like kind of a top name as well. And that's why Balor, he doesn't make sense, or to us he does, but I don't think they see Balor as like, oh, this is a top name to induct AJ into the Hall of Fame as the headliner. While Stephanie, Triple H will probably be the person to induct her. And it's like, well, of course, Triple H is a top name. He just headlined the Hall of Fame last year. So I feel like it's going to be Balor. Shinsuke would obviously make sense, but he's not going to speak very long. Like, they're not going to have him up there for too long, I would imagine. So, and same thing is like, I don't think they view him as like, this is a guy we can like headline the Hall of Fame ceremony with alongside AJ, because you got to look at the inductor and the inductee. Now, to the people saying Cena, yes, if AJ is the headliner, then John Cena, I think 100% would be the call of, okay, John Cena inducting him. John Cena's great on the marquee. I would say that's how it would go.
Yeah, I think Cena. I'm with you on all that. I think if he's the headliner, and they want to go with Cena as the inductor, then I think that would make a lot of sense. Ryan Adams mentioned Dixie Carter. I was thinking about her also. I don't know what his relationship with her really is at the end of the day. I don't know when he had the falling out with TNA, how involved she was at that point. So I don't know what kind of terms they're actually on. I doubt that AJ has like strong animosity towards her. I just don't know if like if she'd be like his choice to if they I don't know if they're on that kind of level, like relationship wise. Abyss is a good one. That's actually a really good one. He's already in the company. Yeah, it's he's had a lot of history with a lot of people. People are saying Kaz, but for the same reasons Jeremy's saying, I couldn't see Kaz or like Gallows and Anderson, for instance. If AJ is the headliner, I don't think that they would be the inductors just for the same reasons he was mentioning.
I'll ask Gallows tomorrow. We're supposed to have him on in the weeds. Be like, hey, you gonna induct AJ?
Oh, nice. Oh, that's so funny. Ask him when talking or was it talking shop mania?
Yeah, he's been asked that a lot. We asked him last time he was on. He was on maybe like 2 months ago. Yeah, we probably won't ask him that because we just did, and it's the same answer of they're working on it. So yeah, we won't. But if you got any other questions that we can ask him, please let me know, because again, we just had him like 2 months ago. Not that like we don't have plenty of questions for Gallows, who's been everywhere and done everything. So you talk to that guy for hours on end. But yeah, I'll flat out ask him, like, you've been asked to do the induction yet?
Yeah, there you go. I thought one of the funniest things I saw in a while was, I think it was, how many have they done? 2 Talking Shop Manias so far?
Yeah, 2. Yeah,
just 2. I think it was the second one was like during like the height of Retribution, and they had like one of the guys out there that was supposed to look like Slapjack, and he was wearing a paper plate on his face as a mask, and I was like, this is the fuck. Is like Slapjack was the guy in Retribution who wore like that hockey mask or whatever. Who was that, by the way? Was it like one of the TM13 guys or TMDK guys?
The hockey Slapjack mask. Yeah, Slapjack was Shane Thorne.
Yeah. And in Talking Shop Mania, whoever played him in that was wearing a paper plate with eye holes cut out of it. I was like, it was so funny to me. But anyways, yeah, big pop.
Josh, I will ask Gallows about teaming with his son. That's a good question. That might have been something Joel was going to bring up anyway, but we'll definitely ask him about teaming with his son. That's a cool moment.
I'm sure you were planning to ask already, but I would ask him about his experience becoming Festus again recently.
Oh, yeah. I kind of think we're getting him on through MLW, and obviously he did that at MLW. So, yeah, that was already going to be a topic. Court Bauer, he was on the show the day of the battle ride, the day it was recorded. And so we're going to bring this up to Gallows. Bauer had mentioned... or we had mentioned like, hey, we've signed Luke Gallows to our fake promotion. And he's like, oh, you can have Gallows, like, as long as I have the rights to Festus. And then we thought it was like an offhand, that's a funny joke. And then lo and behold, that night Festus returns. It's like Court was telling us something there and we didn't know that. So yeah, we're going to bring that up with Gallows.
That's funny. That's good stuff. Yeah, a lot of people mention a lot of the same names in the chat. So, I mean, and well, actually a lot of different name options, but some overlapping as well. I mean, there's a lot of good ones in there. Someone mentioned Zeno, mentioned Cody Rhodes. I mean, obviously, I think that'd be great because I'm a Cody fan, but I know that they both were technically Bullet Club, and I think they are friends with one another, but I don't think that they have that type of relationship, you know?
Yeah,
So
I don't think it'll be Cody for that reason as well. I think there's just a few people ahead of Cody on that list.
Kurt Angle would have been great. That's actually a good one. That's Josh. We'll put that one up there. We'll give you credit for that. That's a really good. That's a really good shout out. That might be my front runner, honestly, because of their history in TNA. It'd be a good speech.
It's a good option. He's not my front runner though. My front runner is probably Balor. That was the first name that came to mind. So that's where I'm gonna go is Balor. I mean, Gallows and Anderson would probably be the people it should be. But I don't think it's going to be them. So then I would look at Balor. Cena's a really good option, honestly, simply because I mean the AJ Styles feud sort of revived and definitely elevated Cena's career, especially like the last half of that of his final full-time run. I mean, it's legitimately one of Cena's greatest rivalries. And when you're talking in ring, there's no better matches that Cena had. I know people like the Edge matches. I'm down on it more than others, but that's my own personal taste. The Randy Orton matches, there aren't a ton of great Randy Orton matches with Cena. Like when you look at in-ring quality, every single AJ Styles John Cena match they knocked it out of the park every single time. And so yeah, I think Cena would be a really good one. Samoa Joe would be my first option over Finn Balor. Obviously, I'm not going to say Samoa Joe because I don't think there's a chance in hell that it actually happens unless his contract is up in the next 2 months or so. So that's why I'm not going to go with Joe, because Daniel's kind of the same way. I would say one of those two would be my first options, but for obvious reasons, they're not going to be doing it.
I think if AJ had his choice, he'd probably choose Christopher Daniels. I think if he could choose one person, because they had so many matches before either were even in TNA, and then of course what they did together in TNA and everything. Yeah, I mean, it won't be anyone from AEW. Who was it? They couldn't get Sting for, was it Luger's induction?
Luger. Yeah.
I mean, if they couldn't make that happen, they're not going to be making any of that happen, unfortunately, for us, the fans, but it is what it is.
Easy Dame.
I think that Cena is a really good option though too. Like you said, the whole beat up John Cena thing was a good feud. It did help revitalize John Cena in a lot of ways, and it also elevated AJ even more. They had, I think it was their match at the Royal Rumble where they didn't even leave the ring, which is like a big testament too to Cena, who was, people were constantly talking about how he couldn't wrestle. There was a huge arc there for a minute that really started with the U.S. Open challenges for Cena, that I felt like that's when he really turned the corner and proved he actually could work, or could wrestle, have good matches. Wasn't as generic as, he was always letting on up to that point. It's more a product of circumstance. I think he was just doing what the company wanted him to do, and the 5 moves of doom were working, but then eventually the fans turned on that, and he evolved and he pivoted, which worked really well for him. And then also in Cena's last year, his match against AJ, he wrote that intro for AJ, which was great too, about like being the whatever he said about being like the face of nonstop action and the real leader of the Bullet Club. And Cena wrote that himself. So, I mean, I could imagine he would really enjoy writing a induction speech also for AJ, I'd imagine. So
yeah, I
think Cena is a very, very likely candidate as well. I think it very well could be him. And then I'd imagine Triple H is probably inducting Stephanie. So I mentioned earlier, I was like, I'm just so used to, obviously I know Vince doesn't run the company anymore, but I'm just so used to saying like Stephanie is Vince's daughter, but it's like, even more importantly, she's Triple H's wife now also. So it's, listen, Stephanie's done what she's done throughout wrestling too. I'm not going to say she doesn't deserve any credit or anything like that, but it just seemed like it was just strange because they announced her induction months ago, and try to make it like this huge deal. And it's like, I don't think any of the fans really cared that much that she was really being inducted, you know, and it's like coming right off of Triple H being inducted. It just kind of seems, and we're seeing more Triple H than ever before on all the posters and the advertising and in the ring and all this stuff. So I think people have Triple H fatigue, and they're like, oh, we're also inducting Stephanie in now. Oh, also, it seems like Undertaker might be just like choosing who's in the Hall of Fame now because, you know, like behind the scenes, he might actually be making a lot of these decisions potentially. So it just kind of seems like a big, I don't know, for lack of a better term, it's kind of like a big Triple H love fest. And I think the fans are kind of getting annoyed with that. You mix that in with the politics side, but also Triple H and their family being involved there too. And it's like, it's just kind of the mix of all of that right now. I just feel like that kind of just works against Stephanie, whether it's her fault or not.
I mean, we've been sick of Triple H for about 2 decades now. More than that, honestly, but it's just me. WWE Elimination Chamber this weekend. Men's Elimination Chamber match. We talked about this a little bit last week. So, and I like, you're picking Cody Rhodes. I already
of course.
know that. Yeah. I think Cody's going to win too. I don't think it's the best option. I hope if Cody does win, they have a way to not do Cody and Drew straight up at WrestleMania, because I don't think that's a WrestleMania main event. I've seen it for free like 3 times now. Why do I think this is a WrestleMania main event? So if Cody wins, I hope they get other people involved in the WrestleMania match to make it feel bigger. I think Javon's going to have a great performance. I think Trick's going to have a great performance. I look for those two to really stand out in this match.
Yep, I'm with you on all of that, except for, you know, obvious. Well, actually, I guess I agree with everything you said technically, because you do think Cody's going to win still, which I also agree with. I disagree that I don't necessarily not want to see McIntyre versus Cody again, but like we talked about last week, we just saw them in a 3 stages of hell match. Like, is this just going to be a normal match at WrestleMania? How are they going to up the stakes? Because I think they're going to have to. It's going to have to be a different type of match. So maybe it's a Hell in a Cell or something. I don't know. They're going to have to market some sort of big time stipulation match. I feel like if it is going to be Cody versus Drew 1-on-1. Also, though, since last time we talked about this match, Trick Williams has qualified and Jey Uso was qualified. And during Jey Uso's qualification, that was when Bronson Reed got injured. And it looked like, you know, Bronson Reed was probably supposed to win the match, I would imagine, because Jey Uso is going to have the tag champions. I don't think that this was the plan, probably. That's not to say, like, I get Jey Uso as over as he is, and it's not like it doesn't make sense for him to be involved in this. He's still one of their top guys, but it just kind of seemed like out of place that they just reunited the Usos as the tag team champions. Now Jay's in the match all of a sudden when, like, Bronson clearly got hurt during that match. And the vision itself is just cursed. I mean, what else can you say? Seth and then Braun and then Bronson. My vote is just rebrand it the Low Gang and just have Logan as the leader with the wise man Paul Heyman just backing Logan. Austin Theory can stay in the group too. Basically get young guys and girls around the Vanity Project. Like, those, maybe not exactly them, but people like them. Young, impressionable, want views, want followers, Rock Prime merch, you know, all this kind of stuff. Like, I would literally just lean into that and just have Logan be like the leader with Paul Heyman teaching him along the way.
So I'm not actually mad at this idea. I don't think it's the worst idea in the world. I would completely cut out Paul Heyman from that, because I think Heyman is kind of checked out on this anyway, because Brock is back and he's gonna go with Brock. And I just don't think that he, especially now that Seth's hurt, Bronson's hurt, he didn't sign up to manage Logan Paul and Austin Theory. So I'm okay with like Logan doing like having his own group and everything you pitched, and sure, keep Austin Theory part of it, add the Vanity Project into it. Like I'm actually fully okay with that. I just don't think that group needs Paul Heyman, and I don't think Paul Heyman wants anything to do with that group.
Well, I agree and disagree. What I disagree with is that Paul Heyman has always been one to try to keep his finger on like what's either hip or what's coming next. And he was a big example of that's obviously ECW. Like the way he ran ECW, when he ran ECW. The business side's different, but he was smart enough to know to use the licensed music and the grungy characters and all the stuff he did with ECW, which heavily influenced what wound up happening on TV with WWF and WCW those years as well. And Heyman has always been huge on using social media. I don't know if he does it anymore, but he used to have like those like a lot of like female models that used to like model for his merch and stuff. But he's always just been very like in tap with what's next. And I feel like Logan actually can massively benefit on screen and behind the scenes by having, because he's still so new to the wrestling business, but he's so talented. Like Heyman's like the perfect mentor to teach him about wrestling.
I think you're overrating Paul Heyman's value in 2026.
He's literally Triple H's right-hand man. He's like helping run the company. When Triple H did his induction speech last year at the Hall of Fame, pretty much the only person he mentioned was Paul Heyman. He was like, he's like, it's me and you, man. Like we got to figure this out ourselves. Like that's his guy. So yeah, I think his value is really big still.
Okay. I don't see it that way. If he's his right-hand man, then look at the position they're in. Then you got to give Paul Heyman some blame for the position that they are in. If he's Triple H's right-hand man.
But sorry, I missed the first part of what you said. The giving him credit for
blame
what
because
blame for what?
For the state of the company and creative right
now. I better say like
sucks.
But still, I still think it makes sense for him and Logan Paul for everything. I think everything I said still stands, but I don't disagree that like, the company, people seem to be kind of upset with like the direction of the company and stuff and the ticket prices and whatnot. There's definitely fans that are not super happy with the WWE.
I mean, creative isn't great right now. Like, let's do another Masked Man angle. Let's do somebody out of a crate. We don't even have an opponent for Brock Lesnar. So let's do like this open challenge thing. The creative isn't even good right now. So if Paul Heyman is Triple H's right-hand man and giving him ideas and talking to him, then all right, I'll blame Paul Heyman for this as well. Like, I think Heyman has value. He 100% has value. I'm not trying to pretend otherwise. I think you're overrating how much he still contributes at the level that he used to contribute as far as on screen and off in 2026. Like obviously throughout history, Paul Heyman he's been at the forefront and he's been ahead in a lot of areas. I don't think he's there in 2026. Most of those are Raw problems. All right, fine. SmackDown problems are you have no women's title contenders for Jade Cargill because Tiffany Stratton's probably going to win this Elimination Chamber match to face Jade Cargill, and that's a match we've seen 100 times and not very interesting, honestly, with Cargill and Stratton again. The men's title picture, we just talked about Cody potentially winning. You're going to do Cody and Drew again. The men's title picture doesn't have a whole lot going on for it either. SmackDown doesn't have anything like much better going on out there. Like the Carmelo Open Challenge is good. I mean, there's that. We've been doing MFTs and Wyatt 6 for about 8 months now, it feels like, and maybe that'll come to a conclusion. I don't know. Oh, I don't think SmackDown's doing like lighting the world on fire here. They don't even have SmackDown doesn't have a singles match this weekend. Like they don't even have a feud good enough to where we can put this match on pay-per-view. The 2 matches are Raw matches, and then the Chamber matches are obviously a mix, but the 2 matches are Raw matches. Like SmackDown doesn't even have that right now.
Yeah, these are fair points, fair criticisms. Zeno mentions this in the chat, and we talked about this the last few weeks also. But how does Jacob Fatu fit into this? Have they moved him out of that picture now, or like why is he's not even on the pay-per-view?
Yeah, he didn't qualify. I do hope he gets added. I hope it's a 3-way at the very least at WrestleMania. How they get there, there's ways. I mean, Jacob can easily qualify or can easily get a title match a different way. Jacob, because Drew cost him the 3-way, kind of taking him out and everything. He has a complaint there. Drew has an issue with Jacob. Like you can obviously get there of getting Jacob in that match. He's not there yet. Is the whole thing. Like we don't know if he's going to get there. We don't know if he's going to get the match. We do know who's in the chamber on Sunday, and we do know, or Saturday, and we do know that the winner of that match gets the title shots, and Cody is the favorite right now. I would go with Trick. Trick and Drew is not and Henry saying I would like to see Trick win. Trick and Drew is not a WrestleMania main event. I'm not going to pretend like it is. But I'd rather just see that match and see them go with someone fresh instead of I'd rather see someone fresh than Cody and Drew again. And Trick is very fresh and Trick is very over.
So I agree that they do need to capitalize on Trick Williams soon. He's getting big reactions. He's fresh, like he's new to the mix on the main roster. There's a lot of time I feel like with him, but I'm not saying that they should wait too long either. Like I think they should capitalize, strike while the iron's hot. Like I totally, like I wouldn't. Obviously, I'm picking Cody, but like I'm not against them pushing Trick Williams. Like I would totally understand why they would want to do that. But we'd also talked about. So do they add Jacob Fatu in to make it a 3-way? I have been low key for a minute. Like I shouldn't say I've been high key talking about this, but low key on the show, I feel like it's been brewing that it totally could still be a 4-way match. Like they're still Sami Zayn. Like that's not done. Like that they're teasing more with him and Cody, and also almost making you feel like is Cody actually the bad guy here a little bit and stuff. Like so I think that it's still very possible it's a 4-way match at WrestleMania, and it's Sammy versus Jacob versus Cody versus Drew. But it's a matter of like, how do they get there with it making any kind of logical sense between, not that it necessarily has to. I mean, it's pro wrestling. They can just do whatever they want. But, we only have, less than, what are we at? Like a month and a half until WrestleMania, basically.
So about 2 months. WrestleMania is the 18th and 19th of April.
Oh, right. So I think that, you can make a case depending on how you play this out. I don't know exactly how you do it, but you could have Jacob get involved in the chamber and or Sammy get involved in the chamber. There's ways you could figure this out. But the other thing about this too, that we haven't talked about, and I don't know if they're going to do it this year at WrestleMania or they're going to wait till next year, but Cody versus Randy Orton is inevitable. So, like, I just don't think that they're going to go into this WrestleMania having, like, I think Drew versus Cody is just the biggest match that they can do with Drew being the champion. But I wouldn't be mad if they did Cody versus Randy Orton at WrestleMania. It's just the title wouldn't be on the line, and I don't know what you would do with Drew. Like, I don't think they're going to actually go with Trick Williams. I'm sure they're not going to go with Jey Uso again. Devon, as much as I like him, I don't think that's happening yet. the only other person there is LA Knight, who we've talked about a lot. We're like, maybe, dude, I wouldn't even be mad about it. Like, if we got, even though I'm the biggest Cody Rhodes fan in the world and I want to see him win the WrestleMania main event and him be the champion again and everything, I'm not totally mad about the idea of Cody beating Randy Orton at WrestleMania and LA Knight actually having a moment against Drew McIntyre. Even if he doesn't win the match, Drew McIntyre versus LA Knight, and him finally getting a big match in a title shot. Like, he's at least earned an opportunity, in my opinion. So,
I mean, I wouldn't mind LA Knight winning this and facing Drew. It's fine. Is that a WrestleMania main event? I don't know.
Well, they got the 2 nights. Like, they can always, that's going to be the thing, you know, is like night 2 main events really the main event, but yeah, someone's going to main event night 1.
Yeah, but you still should make night 1 a strong main event. Like, you don't want it to feel like, well, this is the main event because we have 2 nights. Like, you want it to still feel like a main event. Like, last year's still felt like a main event. You know, the year before, I realized they worked in conjunction with each other, but obviously that felt like a main event. The year before was Austin's return. That felt like a main event. Oh no, the year before was 39. That was the tag team match though, but that still felt like a main event. That was a very strong story, Kevin and Sami against the Usos. So yeah, you still want it to feel like a main event, and none of these matches, as they're currently laid out, feel like that. Now again, they've got time to get there. It's very, they could easily get there on this stuff. We shall see who they go with. Do you have a prediction for the women's chamber?
Well, I mean, Tiffany seems like the most obvious, and that's probably who it's going to be. It's unfortunate that, you know, I'm assuming since Bianca isn't back yet, and we talked about that last week too, like she's out of the picture. She's who I think most of us want to see wrestle Jade at WrestleMania, but that's not going to be possible. I feel like you can't truly count Rhea Ripley out. I just don't know if they're going to go with such a quick build to the first ever, you know, big Rhea versus Jade match coming out of the chamber. They could, I think, but that's on a poster, like that looks like a, you know, I don't know if that's worthy of a main event. Like, honestly, just because I don't know if the match would be as good as, like, you know, some of these other matches we're talking about. But, I mean, to the casual viewer, especially if you saw Rhea Ripley and Jade Cargill on a poster, like, I mean, Rhea is incredibly over. We can't deny that. And she does have really good matches. Y'all know I'm a big Jade fan. I'm day one Jade Cargill supporter and defender. But I also know she still has, you know, her limitations in the ring. So that's a big spot to be in, WrestleMania main event. So all the women are talented. Raquel Rodriguez, by the way, doing the best work of her career by far. Like, she's one of the most improved wrestlers I've seen in a while. So I got to give her credit there. But yeah, I think my prediction's got to be Tiffany, but I would prefer if it was Rhea.
Yeah, I would prefer Rhea as well. I've said it many times that I think Rhea should be in the main event at WrestleMania. I don't know how she hasn't at this point. Maybe they do the women's tag team title match if it's like a TLC match. Maybe that can feel like a main event to me, because they put a lot of stock and equity and time into the women's tag team title picture right now. So I could see them doing that as a potential main event. Rhea and Jade, it looks good. I don't know if they want their WrestleMania main event going 11 minutes. That might be a little short, and we have not seen Jade do a match over 11 minutes. SP3 and I literally looked at this. Maybe it was me and Joel. We looked at this like,
oh, really?
She's never had a match over, I think 12 minutes is her longest. Like, she went like 12:30 against Roxanne, and that match was a little rough. So I don't know if she could do that long of a match. She's never done it before. Now you're going to put her in that spot at WrestleMania main event. That, I don't think that's going to happen. Tiffany and Jade, like I said, like, I don't have an interest in that. I've seen that. The matches existed. There's not much of a feud or rivalry. There's not much of anything there to me.
Yeah.
I mean, there is a rivalry. There's a story. There's, you know, there's history, but I don't have a whole lot of interest in that. But Tiffany's the favorite, so okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And, by the way, and some people in the chat have kind of talked about this too. People were speculating, and there seemed to be reports and maybe some. You can tell by the way the storylines were going coming out of War Games and stuff that Cody Roman 3 was very much on the table. It seemed like not too long ago. But we also have to keep in mind, you were saying the creative is so bad and the spot that they're in and all that. And I don't disagree, but also we got to be fair, like they lost Seth Rollins, Braun Breaker, and Bronson Reed all during WrestleMania season, essentially. Okay, those are three. I mean, because like Seth would have figured into one of the main plans, and so would Braun Breaker. I mean, those are two of your biggest planned people probably for the entire event.
They lost one match. They lost Seth and Braun. And we don't even know if they lost that yet. But that was the plan, Seth and Braun. So now maybe in October when Seth got hurt, maybe the plan was different and he was going to do something else. But certainly when he got hurt and they did the turn, the plan was Seth and Braun. Bronson, it's very unfortunate that he got hurt. I don't know what they were going to do with Bronson at WrestleMania. There was no real direction for him. He was a background guy in the vision. The focus was on Braun Breaker, and then Logan Paul came in, and so focus kind of became on him a little bit. Austin Theory is there. Bronson was not presented as the guy that he probably should have been presented as, especially after beating Roman Reigns. So losing Bronson sucks, but I'm not going to pretend like that completely killed any plans they had for WrestleMania. And Seth and Braun, from what we know, that was the plan for WrestleMania. So you just kind of lost that match. And you may not have lost that match. They might be okay to get to WrestleMania and to do the match still. So I'm not giving them a pass because those two guys got hurt. They screwed up the creative in the first place because they should have just put the title on Braun Breaker after Seth got hurt, but can't do that now.
That's fair. Well, the title is currently around the waist of CM Punk, who
he's going to beat Finn Balor. Okay.
Yeah, he's going to beat Finn Balor. I think it'll be a good match. I don't know. I mean, I hope it's as good or better than the match that they had in Balor's hometown in Ireland. I was like blanking. I was like, why can't I think of the name? Why can't I think of Ireland? But yeah, that was a great match and a great moment. I think that they're building towards, especially based on what I saw on Raw. It seems pretty clear we're going to get Finn versus Dom, probably at WrestleMania this year. They're clearly heading that direction for a feud. So, I'm all for that. So, yeah. This is a good matchup too. Like it'll be a good heavyweight title match. Balor, I hate to say he's expendable. I don't mean expendable for like in the whole company from that standpoint, but I mean like you don't expect him to win this match, and we know it's going to be CM Punk versus Roman Reigns. So at the very least, we all like Finn Balor. He's gonna have a good match. He's credible enough that it makes sense for him to have a title match, but no one's really expecting him to win or to mess up the WrestleMania matchup or anything. So, and then of course this is in Chicago, which, CM Punk's playground, which also, comes full circle because the last matchup was in Ireland for Finn's home crowd advantage, and now Punk's gonna have that in Chicago. So, but yeah, I'm gonna pick CM Punk, and then, I mean, I gotta take Becky Lynch over AJ Lee. I think I don't think that'd be a good idea to have AJ win that match, but I mean, it's in Chicago. I don't know how dedicated AJ is to like how often she'll be around or for how long she'll be around. I can't rule it out. I mean, I think it's if she's gonna win that match or that title, like this would be the show for AJ Lee to do it. But I don't know. I feel like you got the two power couples of Becky and Seth, and you got CM Punk and AJ, and it's like, I don't know. AJ and Punk can't both win, right?
I think
my prediction is AJ Lee. I'm changing my mind.
I think it's going to end in a DQ. I think it's going to be a non-finish. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then that sets up a stipulation match at WrestleMania, or Becky cheats to win. I don't know why you would do an AJ victory if you're going to do the rematch at WrestleMania, which we all suspect they are. Why you do an AJ victory and then you do a stipulation match at WrestleMania when AJ's beating her at every turn? Like, what stipulation are you adding? At least if Becky cheats to win, then there's reasonable cause for a stipulation. If Becky gets DQ'd or it's a double DQ or whatever it is, then there's a reasonable cause for a stipulation. So yeah, I think it's going to be either Becky cheats to win or a non-finish. Do you have any final predictions on what's in the crate?
I saw that the betting odds are the highest for Danhausen.
Yeah.
You've got to be kidding me. If Danhausen pops out of that box, I'm eating my own face live on stream. Dan, you think they're going to, like, I do not think that's happening for a second. You think that the WWE, I would be shocked. And listen, I'm not like one of these guys who hates Danhausen. I'm actually a Danhausen supporter. I watched him live in the Basement East in Nashville, Tennessee, wrestling for Southern Underground Pro, Subgraps, back before he was like the nice, evil Danhausen, back when he was Donovan Danhausen. He came out in a body bag with a railroad spike in his mouth. Like, so I've known about Danhausen for a very long time. I actually knew about Danhausen before he even wore face paint that long ago. So, but that all said, it's just really hard for me to believe that the WWE is going to debut a character that the majority of their audience is going to have no idea who he is. Most of them aren't watching AEW. A percentage are, but most of them probably aren't. But they're in Chicago. The one thing they're going to have going for them, it's a wrestling crowd. So this particular, the live audience might get it, but the broader audience watching from home, most of that WWE audience would have no idea who Danhausen is or what they're looking at or why it would make any sense for him to pop out of a box. For Danhausen's sake, I hope it's him, because that would be the biggest day of his life. I mean, he would go from the career he's had up to this point to never being able to go into an airport ever again without people recognizing him in one appearance. But I think if Danhausen's heading to the WWE, he's going to NXT. I don't think he's going to be the big reveal on pay-per-view. I just don't see it.
I think we're putting all too much stock into what's in this crate anyway and how much it actually means. Like, this is the egg. That's all this is. This is the Survivor Series egg. And what did we get out of that? The gobbledygooker. Okay. Mm-hmm. This is not that important. Let's stop pretending like this is going to be some huge reveal. This is why my expectations is just some video game thing, and it's just a statue.
You said last week, and I was like, damn, that's depressing, but you might be right.
Yeah, like, I don't think this is that big of a deal, honestly. It's a crate. Like, if it's Danhausen, all right, fine. I'm not expecting anything big. Danhausen will get a good reaction in Chicago. I don't know what he does on the WWE main roster. He's fine as a comedy guy. He can do that. It'll be fine. All right. But it's the egg. This is the 2026 version of the Survivor Series egg. Let's not give it any more thought than that.
Yeah, so we'll see what it is. The other mystery is who's going to wrestle Brock. Not on this show, but they started that whole thing about it's Oba eventually, right? I mean, that's got to be where they're. You don't think it's going to be Oba Femi answering that challenge at WrestleMania?
I mean, do I hope it's Oba Femi, and do I hope that Oba Femi wins in 30 seconds? Yes, I do. My expectation is Danhausen.
It's Danhausen. Dude, maybe they're tied together. Like the crate comes out, and then the only thing that could potentially make this work with Danhausen, once again, assuming that the audience doesn't really know who he is if he popped out of that crate and they played like Danhausen style music, like just that weird, like wah, 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 and like the crowd was just confused and just saw this guy probably like, hey, people would be like, what the hell just happened? Because the expectations are already so low that maybe they would just accept that. It'd be like, you know what? So when I was watching the Olympics, I was very confused because after they hand out all those gold medals, right? And then they go back across all the players and handed them a stuffed animal.
Oh yeah.
And right. And when I saw that, the first thing I thought of, did you watch The Office? The show The Office?
Yes. Yeah.
Remember when Michael Scott gives Oscar that thing he made when he leaves? Like it's like that weird puppet that Michael gives to Oscar, and Oscar like pretends like he likes it, and even Michael's like, he just accepted this, like I've put all this effort into it. That's just I feel like that's where we're at with all of this.
I don't know who Brock's opponent's going to be. My expectations are very low.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I'm just saying the expectations are so low. That's why I'm making the comparison to that is like, yeah. I think the fans will just accept whatever it is because it's just like, either your expectations are going to be so insanely high that you're going to be massively disappointed, or your expectations are so low that you're just going to accept it. It's not Chris Jericho popping out of that box, I don't think. Maybe Danhausen's the distraction. He's like the surprise before the surprise. Like Danhausen pops out of the box and just confuses everybody, and then Jericho's countdown starts, and everyone's like, it's Jericho-hausen, which would be a terrible idea.
Let's move
on. Over 1 million fans and a great number in the demo tuned in. And it was a great show, and I think it's been a run of great shows.
MJF and Hangman Page have agreed to the stipulation. Well, I guess they didn't really agree, but they picked their stipulations, and then MJF flipped the coin. It was a double-sided coin. He got caught using it, and then Tony Khan said, all right, it's a Texas death match, and Hangman Page's future world title shot is still on the line. MJF's stipulation was a one-way DQ match, which I actually appreciated that he did a stipulation that works fully in his favor, and more heels should do that.
This would have got my vote for the funniest segment of the year in all of pro wrestling had it just ended after the coin toss. Because like they built up Hangman's speech so big about like you being a coward and what he's going to do to you, and he's going to drag you through the glass, and he's going to put barbed wire in your mouth, and he's going to do all this. And then MJF just flips the coin, it lands on heads, and he's like, see you at the pay-per-view. And Hangman just looks like an idiot after saying all that. I was like laughing out loud because I was like, there's no way. I was like, there's no way this is the end of that. But had that just been the end of the segment, it would have just made Hangman look like the dumbest wrestler in the history of wrestling. That said, I still think it was kind of corny how they did ultimately do it, but it is to the character of MJF that he would have a two-sided coin, and that, he would have that in his favor. And then he basically cost, because of who he is and how he conducts himself, he cost himself, he didn't even wind up leaving anything to chance at the end of the day because he cheated, and now Hangman gets his stipulation. So I think it's kind of weird and convoluted that Hangman has to put his future world title shots on the line during this, but maybe it'll circle back, like we said, where he'll go back on that or something as like a future story.
Well, that was his choice. I think the way they got there last week wasn't completely clear, despite them trying to tell us it was completely clear. And then even you pick a stipulation, like Hangman offering up, I won't get another world title shot if you give me a Texas death match. Again, then MJF saying, oh, I agree, but I also get to pick stipulation. But then MJF not getting his stipulation. But if MJF got his stipulation, Hangman would still have to give up his world title shots, even though he didn't get the stipulation that he chose, and he already has a world title shot anyway. Like, so why are you giving up a future? Like, all that stuff was, yeah. How they got there was a little. They took a longer path. this segment last night I thought was great. I thought this was just perfectly fun, old school professional wrestling of, all right, the heel has his set of rules. He's going to get there by any means necessary. The babyface understands what the heel is trying to do. He has fail safes to call him out on it. The heel looks like an idiot because the heel failed in his tactics to get his way, and the babyface comes out in the conquering way. I thought last night was a great segment. How they got there was a little rough, but I thought last night they made the most of actually getting there.
Well, all of it, at the end of the day, it all made sense, which, is all I can really ask for. And the match is going to be great. I am, I guess, I don't like the idea of these type of, not the stipulation itself. I'm all for them doing a Texas death match, but the whole idea of Hangman not being able to challenge for the title. But in this instance, it's kind of actually working as intended, because to be completely honest, without the stipulation, I would have been really, really confident that MJF is retaining. But because the stipulation exists, I actually do feel like there's a better chance of Hangman winning. And I am almost leaning towards Hangman winning at this point. Like, if you would ask me that a couple weeks ago, I would have said I'm like 90% sure MJF is retaining. But now I'm more like, it's almost 50-50, honestly. I don't like the idea of him taking the title off MJF so fast. But just because, let's say Hangman wins the title, that doesn't mean that MJF couldn't win the title back from Hangman. And then that way, Hangman can still challenge for it again in the future. The great thing that this is the bigger conversation here with these two is more so about the world title scene. And I think MJF deserves a lot of that credit too. He doesn't deserve full credit, but he deserves a lot of the credit, because when he became the champion, it really felt like the title scene opened up a lot more, because he has so much history with so many of the top names, and a lot of those names have a lot of history in AEW. So you just have all these things that can sprout off of that, because like specifically, like right now you have a long history between Hangman and MJF. But then you also have a long history between MJF and Darby Allin. You've had some incredible matches between MJF and Will Ospreay whenever Will Ospreay's back. Swerve has probably the most well-known feud in all of AEW. Maybe not in the history of AEW. CM Punk and MJF. I think a lot of people might say that, and I wouldn't argue that. But I think Swerve and Hangman is the other big feud in that conversation. And Swerve has history with Hangman. Obviously, Swerve has history with Darby Allin. So all these guys have history with one another, and they have a lot of equity in AEW because they've all been in the company for years. So I think the AEW world title scene in general is just like, it's actually just in like the best. It's probably the best position it's been in maybe ever. And then I've even mentioned, Kenny Omega can always be in there. Takeshita eventually is going to be elevated to that. I mean, you have a lot of people in that pipeline too, ready to go. So it's just a great situation to be in, because even though I think MJF should be the world champion for longer, it ultimately doesn't bother me if Hangman wins the title, because Swerve and Hangman will happen again at some point. That Ospreay's coming back at some point. Darby's going to be back in that mix after he's done with Gabe Kidd and those guys. So there's just, they have a lot of great options at the top, and all those top guys that I mentioned, any of them could be the world champion in AEW, and it makes sense.
Yeah, the world title picture right now in AEW is playing out very well. And then you got Swerve and Brody who are going to face. You got Andrade and Bandito.
Brody, I didn't even mention Brody. So, yeah, Andrade is doing the best he's done in a long time.
Yeah, so the world title scene is definitely strong in AEW, and look forward to how this plays out with Hangman and MJF, because I do agree with you that if they just did a regular match, I don't care what the stipulation is, I would have just thought MJF was going to win. But this stipulation now, I'm like, oh, maybe Hangman is going to win this, because if Hangman doesn't win this, how are you going to book Hangman moving forward with everything? So yeah, it's good stuff what they're doing with the world title picture.
Yeah, I agree. And I don't necessarily need to see Hangman go through that whole character arc again of like he loses this match and now he can't get a title shot. So now he's depressed and now he's either drinking or he's fallen out with his friends and he's got to find himself again. He becomes the dark cowboy and comes back around to learn the error of his ways. But I feel like we've already been through all that. You know what I mean? So it's like I just want, when it comes to Hangman, essentially, I just want white meat babyface Hangman Page, but just have enough of an edge to where, like, when you have these Texas death matches, I'm still expecting you to completely want to just, for lack of better terms, it's a death match. You're trying to kill your opponent pretty much. And we've seen the lengths that Hangman will go in these types of matches. And on the flip side, you have the purest heel in all professional wrestling, an MJF, who's a great foil to a top babyface. So this is all great stuff. And the match is going to be incredible. I mean, so yeah, I'm looking forward to it. My prediction as of right now actually has changed. I am leaning Hangman Page. That could shift a little bit more. We'll see as we get closer to the actual pay-per-view. But as of right now, I'm going to actually go with Hangman after last night.
Okay. I really think it could go either way. The other spotlight for AEW was the main event last night, the Mile High Madness match with FTR and the Demand against Jack Perry, the Rascals, and the Young Bucks. The finish was everybody killing Ricochet with their finishers, and Jack Perry pinning Ricochet for a third time. The only thing that disappointed me in this whole thing was I needed a segment with the Young Bucks, Jack Perry, and the Rascals just coming out of like the smoke-filled room and just being like, all right, we're ready for Mile High Madness. That's it. That's simple. That's all I needed.
Yeah, that I mean, so there's that, and there's the whole gimmick of the Rascals, which I think has worked well so far on AEW TV. They're not like overdoing it, you know what I mean? Like the merch looks cool. It's very clear what they're into, but they're not out there just like constantly jamming it down everyone's throat. This is coming from somebody who supports these type of activities. Trust me. I'm a long-time Rascals guy. And also like this is, I'm happy for all these guys involved. And I thought the main event match was awesome. I loved that main event last night. It was nonstop action from bell to bell. Loved it. But I also think it's really cool finally seeing Myron Reed like on this stage, because he's a guy who's been so good for so long in the independent scene, and he's wrestled places like TNA and MLW and stuff. He's done good things in his career, but like Myron was always that guy where like people would always talk about the Rascals and they talk about the other three, and like I just feel like the world's gonna like Myron. I think Myron's gonna have a really good career in AEW. I think all these guys are, but like I just feel like Myron was always the one that kind of got forgotten about of that group in a lot of ways. So it's good to see him, because he just goes out there last night and just like hits all his stuff, jumps over the top, and then takes like that nice bump after getting caught, on the announce table and stuff. And but yeah, this I can't do this match justice by like describing it. The main reason that I wanted this as a spotlight is really just for anyone who didn't watch it. I would just really recommend watching it, even if you're not an AEW fan. This is just a really fun match. Like a lot of just awesome moves. They use weapons. There's the theme music. Jungle Boy's theme music is like playing throughout the first few minutes of the match, similar to when they do Anarchy in the Arena. So it was, this was awesome. And then the finish, like you said, I forget what they call it, but when the Young Bucks like throw Jack Perry into with his flying knee, he's now pinned Ricochet 3 times, and Ricochet, of course, the national champion. They're heavily alluding to, Jack Perry clearly will be getting a title shot soon. I'm assuming, I don't know if they made it official, but I'm assuming that's at the pay-per-view. It's going to be the national title match. And that title's so new that we don't really know how much they're going to hot potato that. But if things go as I kind of expect them to, the national championship might make more sense soon. I'm still against the idea of them having so many titles. But I think a match like Jack Perry versus Ricochet, for instance, I think will be a very good match. And I do see a path to where Okada is obviously the international champion. Fletcher is the TNT champion. Now they're going to team together as a Proto Okada, I think is what they were calling it. And I like that little back and forth last night too, where Okada just hates Takeshita so much. He just like the way he talks about him. It's so good. And I do think Takeshita is going to beat Moxley for the Continental Championship, and then they will reunify the Continental and International, like whenever Takeshita and Okada have that match. So like, does that all make sense? Because like the national championship being added, like it doesn't make any sense. But if you do reunite if you reconsolidate two of the titles again, it still makes it's still too many belts, but it makes a little more sense because I think they're going to reunite them. Yeah.
No, I get what you're saying on that. It's possible that they do that. I'm in agreement that Takeshita is going to beat Moxley for the Continental title, and then doing a Takeshita Okada match and making it for the unified title again, since you have the Continental and you have the International champion, makes a lot of sense. So I get 100% see them doing that.
Yeah. So that's just kind of where I see some of those things going with those people involved. But the main event, I can't say enough good things about it. The Young Bucks, they probably still don't get the credit that they deserve. I don't think I've ever seen a bad Young Bucks match in my entire life. Like in these kind of matches, they really thrive. The moves that they do are still unreal. The tag team, the timing that these guys have, and to take the amount of bumps that they have. And then, I mean, you've got everyone out there was working super hard. Ricochet and Jack Perry's probably in the best spot he's been in a while. Like the previous kind of iteration of him, I don't think really worked how they were expecting it to, but he's doing better work now. Is Luchasaurus hurt, by the way?
Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't remember because I feel like we hadn't seen him in a second. So that makes sense. Gates of Agony, went out there, worked super hard. And like a lot of these guys don't get the credit they deserve either, because like they're basing for a lot of these guys, but like it's not easy to just be like catching Jungle Boy and the Young Bucks and these guys like flying all over the place, and the Rascals. I mean, as impressive as they are, like they're still counting on you to catch them when they fly over the top rope or through the ropes to the outside or something. So like, this was awesome. I loved the main event last night. And I think it went to like right at around like 10 minutes or so past the overrun time for the show. So it was like, I felt like the whole thing was just kind of timed perfectly.
Yeah, no, it was another great main event. I mean, we had Kenny and Swerve last week, and I know it wasn't the main event, but we had Fletcher and Ciampa the week before, and so they've had a run of strong matches on the show, whether it's been the main event or in the middle of the show. All right, let's go to the Indies spotlight.
I'm gonna give a big motherfucking shout out.
Kevin Blackwood had his last match at Prestige Roseland. He lost to Judas Icarus. He lost the Prestige Championship to him. Prestige is closing as well, so I guess Judas Icarus is the last champion in Prestige history, unless they pop back up. But Kevin Blackwood has been around for 15 years or so now that he's been wrestling.
It's been a while.
Yeah,
he's been around a long time.
And I'll look it up. I should have had this better prepared. But he's right, not quite as long as I thought. It was 10 years. He debuted in
a long time.
2016.
Grinding the Indies.
Yeah. And he's been on our show before, and extremely nice guy. And he's like you said, he's been really grinding in the Indies for his career, and it just kind of never, whatever a break is, he never got to AEW or WWE or TNA or anything like that. But a guy who was great in DPW. If you watch DPW regularly, great in West Coast Pro. If you watch them, but a real just knowledgeable standout guy on the independent scene.
Yeah, all over the place, and especially in the West Coast, as you just mentioned. Always stood out, different hair colors and stuff. Always had a different type of look with all of his tattoos. I remember like before, because he got a lot of them covered, like he blacked out a lot of his tattoos over time also. And it's had always a very, very unique look, face tattoos and stuff, especially like 10 years ago when I didn't really see a lot of people with face tattoos. You know, he's stood out for a long time, just being, you know, being very, being a true individual. But then on top of that, like I'm just a very, very good professional wrestler. Like his in-ring work was always very, very crisp. He had very very good matches, and a lot of his matches were pretty big when it came to like, you know, when he'd wrestle for these companies like West Coast Pro, for instance, like Defy and stuff like that. He was usually, if not the main event, one of the attractions or main stars of the show. A DPW as well, like you mentioned, you know, DPW. It's a real shame that companies like Prestige and DPW have closed down. I mean, that's a big hit to indie wrestling. There's still a lot of great indie promotions. There's a ton of indie promotions. There's still more wrestling than ever out there. And support your local independent promotions, support all independent professional wrestling, in my opinion. But, you know, those are two of the better companies, man. I mean, and Prestige has been around since, I'm looking at their cage match to verify, but 2017, so about 10 years. The Roseland events were always, you know, a very big deal, pretty much like the WrestleMania of their company. And for some years, you know, Prestige, you know, when they'd run some of these events, you know, there was an era where companies like Prestige and like Beyond Wrestling, you know, PWG, when it would pop up for their shows and stuff, where it was a humongous independent wrestling event back before AEW was around, and there wasn't really options outside of WWE, you know, TNA, New Japan, that kind of stuff. But like within the US, on like a true independent level, companies like Prestige were really, really important, and guys like Kevin Blackwood, very important to that scene for their own generation and for the generation coming up, as well as the previous generation. I mean, he wrestled guys like Masato Tanaka and stuff. Like he's, you know, which says a lot about Blackwood, that legends would want to mix it up with Blackwood, you know, at their older ages and him still in his prime and stuff. So that said, I saw on Twitter, I think I saw he's selling some of his gear, and I think he's commissioning artwork or something. I think I saw something on his Twitter the other day about that. So if you guys want to support Kevin, now that he's retired, looks like he's looking to make a little bit of money outside of wrestling. So if you're interested in potentially getting some of his gear, or maybe I'll hit him up for like a drawing of something. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. Like, he's a creative guy, and I like him. I thought what my proudest thing about our interview with him, and I remember that we've interviewed a lot of people over the years. I remember this really well because before you got there, me and him were talking before, just because I was there first that day. And me and him were talking before you logged on, before we started our interview. And he flat out, you know, he didn't seem standoffish, but I could tell I don't know if he really wanted to do the interview or not. I'll be honest. Like, I wasn't really sure.
He doesn't do a ton. Yeah.
He really doesn't. And I got that vibe. He wasn't, I don't want this to come off the wrong way. He wasn't rude or anything like that, but there's just a certain vibe you get when you start talking to somebody. And I'd never met him or talked to him before that time. So we were talking to one another before you got there. And I just remember him being really grateful that I was really clear about, like, hey man, we're like, me and Jeremy are chill, and like we're really big wrestling fans, but we're probably going to ask you a whole bunch of stuff like you don't really get asked about. You know, like we're going to try to make this. We want you to have fun doing this. You know what I mean? Like, yeah. And then we started the interview, and he was such a nice guy, super intelligent, had like this wide range of different interests. Big fan of like cartoons. We were talking about like 90s Nickelodeon cartoons with him and stuff, and like, you know, so it was just one of those guys where like I really enjoyed that interview with him, because I feel like it kind of we were able to go from like, I don't really want to be here, to like, I think he really enjoyed his time on the show, and we had great rapport. And then he wound up following me on Twitter afterwards too. So that's always a good sign too, where it's like, he must have liked the conversation enough that he at least followed me on Twitter. You know what I mean? And the worst would be like getting blocked, like finish the interview and then I'm blocked. It's like, what the hell did I say to that guy to piss him off? That has never happened, by the way. But it is one of those things where it's just, I'm glad that, we were able to get him on the show during his career. He's a guy I respect a lot, that I know is very well respected by other wrestlers, by promoters, promotions, the fan base, so on and so forth. So congratulations to Kevin Blackwood on a great run. I would not be surprised if he came back. He's still, I don't know his age. I don't think he's super young, but he's not old. Yeah. And he's in phenomenal shape. And I know a lot of these companies would want to continue to work with him if he wanted to keep going, but everyone's like AJ Styles earlier. Everyone's got their reasons. He knows his body better than us. He knows the situation better than us. I'm respecting whatever he wants to do, and I'm a Kevin Blackwood fan. So, yeah, congratulations on a great run.
Yeah, the biggest thing, and it's almost a non-wrestling story, but the thing I remember from our interview with him is when he was talking about like doing tattoos for X-Pac. He's like, Waltman needed someone who like does tattoos. I was like, I do tattoos, and he's like, I went over to his house and was hanging out with his dog. We were watching wrestling, and I was giving him a tattoo, and I was like, that's like the coolest thing I've ever heard. Is he just went over to Sean Waltman's house and was just tattooing him at his house. But yeah, he was a fantastic interview, and a guy who has been around for a while, and a guy who did a lot in his career as well. Again, you can, whatever your definition of making it depends on who you are. Eddie Kingston, when we interviewed him, talked about this, is like, well, like, what is a break? Okay, Amazing Red was never in one of the top companies. He was in TNA, but he was never in WWE or WCW, and then kind of came a little bit before WCW, but he never got to AEW or anything like that. No one's gonna say that like Amazing Red's not a unsuccessful wrestler, like he's one of the most respected dudes in history. So yeah, whatever your definition of making is, like, Kevin made a name for himself on the independent scene. He's very well respected by legends, and he put on some great matches. He was such a good striker, such a good technical wrestler. Like Kevin Blackwood.
Great double foot stomp. Not everyone's got a good double foot stomp. Sometimes it looks real. I mean, honest, sometimes it looks super, super fake when certain people do it. Like they, you know what I mean? They do the thing where they land their feet split, like they're not hitting anything.
Yeah, too early.
Kevin would do the version a lot too, where like the opponent would be standing and he'd really go through them, almost like a missile drop kick. So yeah, and yeah, what you're saying about Amazing Red is right on the money. I mean, he's one of the most influential wrestlers of the last 20, 30 years. If you're looking at what the current wrestling style looks like, the current wrestler being a smaller size and doing so many of the moves. I mean, the Code, when he was doing the Code Red, like back when he created that move, people's tits were blown off. I don't know how to say it. Like you were looking at it and you were like, was that a flipping sunset flip? Like, what did he just, it's like in a semi-pro when they see the first alley-oop and they're like, foul, 2 fouls. Like, I don't know what the fuck did I just see? Like that was Amazing Red with like all the stuff he was doing. He was out there doing Matrix style moves, like straight out of the movie, kicks and evading stuff with bridges and doing Spanish flies and all this. He was a part of the SAT with the guys who created the Spanish fly off the top. Anyway, I agree 100% when it comes to Red and his influence. And I also remember Blackwood. Another just memorable thing about our conversation I just remembered was he was the only wrestler we ever interviewed that admitted, I don't know if admitting is the right word, but he said that like he doesn't watch the ref on the count. Yeah. Remember? And I thought that was so fascinating because most wrestlers are watching the ref's hand to make sure that they don't accidentally get counted. They're looking for that near fall to kick out at 2. And Blackwood would just like get really comfortable with like the cadence of whatever referees he was working with and like not look or keep his eyes closed and kick out based off of feel instead of based off of watching the arm. So like, just another thing that I'll remember from that interview.
Yeah. I'd forgotten about that until you mentioned it. But yes, I now distinctly do remember him talking about that, and I was fascinated by that as well. We had like a bunch of follow-up questions on that.
He said he
like,
learned that from Steve Austin. I remember.
Yeah, I remember him saying that. Yep. Yeah, so look, if you haven't seen the interview with Kevin Blackwood, go back and check it out, because it was a really good interview with him. The other indie spotlight, Steve Corino, guy. We got one person retiring. We got Steve Corino coming back, kind of out of retirement, to win the PWF Championship, and he's kind of being exclusive there. He was an owner, a founder of that company, so it's not like super out of surprising that he won the title. His last singles match was against his son Kobe in PWF. He wrestled under a mask in their tag team tournament not too long ago, so not like super surprising that he would come out of retirement to do this, but certainly winning the title and just him being active still after all of these years and being a WWE coach as well.
Yeah, and honestly, I don't really have much to add to that. That was the main reason I made it this spotlight this week, is because I just wanted people to know, if you happen to miss the story this week, that Steve Corino not only returned to the ring for the first time. Well, I don't know how. Do you know how long ago he did the match in the mask? Because they were talking like he hadn't wrestled in like 5 years, but was he in a mask?
He did that in December.
Time?
Yeah, he did that in December. I'm pretty sure.
But that's still about 5 years off though before he had done that, because we're only in February now.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, and again, he was like Mr. Wrestling or Wrestling Universe or something. It was some wacky name, and of course it's not really Steve Corino. So yeah, they're acting like he did it, and I don't like. I haven't seen the matches. I'm like pretend like I have, so I don't even know like how much he was involved. But like, he won the tag team tournament with his partner, so I imagine he had to wrestle a little bit in those matches. But it was his first singles match, and it was his first match as Steve Corino. So technically it's not untrue of like Steve Corino hasn't wrestled in 5 years. Mr. Wrestling 5 wrestled a couple of matches, but that's not Steve Corino.
Right. That's you ever seen Mystery Men? Remember that movie?
Yes, long time ago, but yes.
Captain Amazing doesn't wear glasses. But whatever, I can't remember the name of I'm gonna butcher because I can't remember the name of the character now. Whoever Captain, their big thing was the guy they all knew, the business guy or whatever, wore glasses. The Captain Amazing didn't wear glasses, and that was how they knew it couldn't have been the same person. Same with also CM Punk. Remember, he came back like a few years back and just like wore a mask and did some like random indie run in and GTS someone. Yeah. But I remember other people that would play, I think they called it CP Monk. It was a chipmunk that was but I don't know if that was actually him or not. I can't remember.
I don't remember. I don't know if that got confirmed or not.
I can't remember. That was a long time ago.
Yeah. Him doing the mask stuff was, I'm pretty sure he more or less confirmed that. Yeah.
I know Sean Ross Sapp has claimed he's done random things like that over the years where he's like done run-ins, but people don't know it's him. That'd be kind of fun to one day try to find, because I don't know what shows this would have been on. So I don't know what kind of footage would exist, if it'd be like a fan footage or if it's actually a show that aired anywhere. But that's a little fun fact for everybody, that like it's something that happens often in wrestling and people don't even realize. Because remember, even like Danielson did like the random masked match in AEW. I can't even remember what character.
Yeah.
Cody did Fuego 2.
Fuego 2, yep.
Yeah. So you never know. But as Jordan from Canada says in the chat, Steve Corino was in the original ECW. Absolutely, he was. Steve Corino, the king of old school. He was one of my favorite members of the kind of like the late ECW roster, kind of as the company was unfortunately winding down and getting ready to close down and everything. Corino was, because he was the champion towards the end of the promotion. And he was always one of those guys I liked a lot. I also, a guy you never hear about, Jack Victory. I remember the two of them being a really cool act in ECW, and Jack Victory would always wear those hockey jerseys and stuff. And I just thought it was cool because ECW was so different back then. It's hard to really understand it unless you lived through it, I feel like. But, I was such a huge WCW fan, and but so I was such a big WCW fan, but a lot of my first exposure to a lot of the ECW guys for the first few years of like for instance, guys like Raven, Sandman, there's various others. I'm just not thinking off the top of my head, but I definitely saw in WCW first. And then when I became aware of how to watch ECW, I retroactively started watching their stuff. And then I was keeping up with the last couple years of ECW as it was happening. But anyway, because of those reasons, by the time I was finally keeping up with it, like in real time, it was unfortunately just the last couple years it was around. But I remember Steve Corino and Jack Victory really standing out as guys I really liked. And Corino had like the bleach blonde hair, and he would bleed, and like the red blood would, he'd change his hair color during the match and stuff. And
he had a feud with Dusty Rhodes.
Yes, of course. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Oh, also, by the way, AJ Styles, I know Cody mentioned this in a recent interview, but I thought it was a fun fact. AJ Styles is like maybe the only wrestler or one of the very few that's wrestled Dusty, Cody, and Dustin, which is pretty cool. Because remember, AJ and Dusty had their feud in TNA.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, I very much remember Steve Corino, and his son Colby's very talented. I think Colby, unfortunately, has just been in a lot of ways, just a circumstance of just like unfortunate circumstances. I don't know how else to say it. Like it seems like right when he's been on the brink of something big, either there's like a big management change wherever is interested in him, or he gets hurt at like the worst time possible, or whatever it is. But he's a very talented wrestler, and he's had success in companies like the NWA, and he's one of the top names of the indies. So, I'm a fan of the Corino family. I want to see Colby succeed. I think he's still got a really bright future ahead of him. And Steve, yeah, man, just the fact that we're still talking about any guys. I know he's not the only one. There's guys like Chris Jericho and stuff still around too. But the fact that there's any people that we're talking about, not just because of how long ago ECW was, but because of like the lifestyle that those guys were living back then and stuff. I'm not going to say Steve Corino might have been the most responsible of all of them for all I know, but anyone who came out of that era, it's almost like the baseball era of like the 90s, where it's like they were all on steroids outside of like maybe a few of them. Like, in the 90s in wrestling, like most of them were partying or doing something, or like the travel was getting to them or whatever. You had to cope with this or that. It was a tough life. And Steve Corino to be able to wrestle in 2026, good for him. And he continues to have a great influence on the wrestling business through his son Colby, and through his teaching and his training for the next generation through the PC and everything he's done. So very cool.
Yeah. All right, let's get to our final topic of the night.
Our product is what it is. We're going straight up the middle.
For some reason, in 2026, we are getting Floyd Mayweather and Manny Pacquiao too. Both of these guys, when they first fought a decade ago, everyone said they were fighting too late and that neither guy is in their prime. And here we are a decade later. Okay.
Yes. Now, full disclosure, everybody, we were hoping to have a guest on the show today that is a boxing expert, and I really wanted to get like an expert's opinion on this. My thoughts are pretty much what Jeremy just described. It's a mixture of, I don't know. It's like kind of like a mix of just like a bunch of different levels of embarrassment almost when it comes to something like this. What I mean by that is like, how bad do you need money if you're Floyd? Like is Floyd in money trouble? Because if he is, that's wild considering how much he's made. And I don't know why. Well, and I don't know why else you're doing these things. Now then again, to be fair, no matter who you are, Netflix is giving people a lot of money to get in there, regardless of what their current financial status is. Like, I don't think that Ronda Rousey is broke, for instance, and she's fighting on Netflix. So like, I don't want to say like Floyd and Manny are only doing this for money, but I also feel like to wait this long to do something like this, and all Floyd has done. I mean, Floyd hasn't wrestled. Floyd hasn't fought professionally, I don't think, since Conor. And that was questionable, not how legitimate that was, but like Conor was never like a real legitimate threat to beat Manny in boxing. Or sorry, to beat Floyd in boxing. So you'd have to go farther back than that. Maybe it even was the Manny fight was his last real boxing match. I don't know.
I think he had one fight after Manny, and then he fought Conor. I'll look it up fast, but
because I know he beat a lot of guys like Ortiz and Canelo and stuff before those guys hit their primes.
I'm correct, by the way. He fought Manny. That was May 2015. He fought Andre Berto in September 2015. And then Conor was August 2017. So yeah, I thought he had one fight between Manny and Conor, and he did.
Yeah, so that makes sense. And we're still talking over a decade ago since his last actual legitimate professional boxing fight against a actual professional boxer.
Well, Manny actually just came out of retirement, and he's fighting somebody coming up pretty soon. I think he actually has a fight before he fights Floyd. So Manny fought in July 2025. That was a majority decision. I think he's supposed to fight. He had a fight announced.
I know Floyd's fighting Tyson in an exhibition before fighting Manny.
Yeah.
Which is also very, very, the size difference there is hilarious.
Manny's supposed to fight on April 18th, and the Floyd fight is in September. So I don't know if that fight is now off because they're doing the Floyd fight and they don't want to risk that. But the guy Manny's facing in April, I don't know what Manny Pacquiao has to offer at 47 with everything. Pavidnikov is who he's fighting in April. He's 42. He's not fought since June 2016. So Manny ain't exactly fighting a dude who's fresh and, well, been in the gym the entire time. He's fighting a dude who has not fought in a decade. I imagine they feel comfortable that Manny's going to win this fight. I've never heard of this guy anyway. I assume, obviously, like prime Manny would have smoked him. I assume they feel comfortable enough where it'll still go through and they can still do the Floyd fight.
Yeah, I would. I'm trying to. How do you say this? I don't think there's any chance that Manny would lose to whoever they're putting up against. Like, no matter what happens, he will win.
They actually changed that to an exhibition fight. It was not originally announced as an exhibition fight. It is now an exhibition fight. So
that makes even more sense.
I think Manny, again, probably would have beat him regardless, but now they're basically telling you, they're just going to pitter patter. And
it's not a real fight.
Yeah, Manny will be okay, and the Floyd fight's not in jeopardy.
Well, that's the same kind of thing with, even though there's a massive size discrepancy between Floyd Mayweather and Mike Tyson, that's also an exhibition, and they're not going to even touch each other. They'll circle one another for 3 rounds or whatever the fight is, collect their money, take no damage. There won't even be a technical winner. Sometimes in these exhibition fights, they literally have it written into their contracts that there cannot, like, it has to be a draw at the end. Like, some of these people in the sport of boxing specifically have such fragile egos that they won't even accept. A lot of these boxers won't even accept a fight unless there's an automatic rematch clause built into their contract, because they're so afraid of, like, well, if I lose to this guy, I got to get a rematch so I can prove I can beat him. It's like, okay, like, no one cares about this fight, but I'm definitely not going to care about the rematch either. So it's unfortunate in a lot of ways, I guess, that these guys are the age that they are, and they either need the money or the money is just too much that they can't turn it down. But I
mean,
don't.
at least they're fighting, you know, I mean, Tyson and Mayweather is a complete joke. But at least this is like with Floyd and Manny, like it's just two old dudes fighting. The same way like Gina and
Yeah.
Rhonda. It's like it's two women who are of the similar age. Again, Gina hasn't fought in a much longer period of time, but at least it's not Tyson and Paul. Tyson and Paul to me was very stupid. Of why are we having a guy fighting a guy half his age? Look, I'm gonna watch Floyd and Manny. I'm the target audience for this dumb shit. But at least, we're getting, I can talk myself into this being like competitive and a fun fight, where Jake Paul and Mike Tyson I just watched because, again, I like this dumb shit. But I was under no disillusion of, oh man, I think it's gonna, like, that's a fight that shouldn't even been sanctioned. Like,
Yeah,
these two guys should not be fighting each other given the age discrepancy and where they are athletically at their respective ages either.
Yeah. I mean, people forget that they did Logan Paul versus Floyd Mayweather also years ago. I mean, these fights that literally make no sense at all for anybody except for, they make money. So that's where we're at. I mean, like you said, at the very least, at least Floyd and Manny are in a similar position to one another. Like, they're a similar age. They both have a lot of years and a lot of miles on them. It's at least seems like probably a pretty fair matchup. It's probably the fairest matchup you're going to get in this type of situation. So, it is what it is. I also, I mean, it's a whole other conversation in itself, but like just the state of professional boxing is just in a weird spot in general, because you also have like the rise of like TKO and what Dana's doing with the Zuffa boxing with Saudi Arabia and all that stuff. And they're starting to sign people, and there's like, they're in this like kind of weird in between era where they're trying to get that off the ground with all that Saudi money. But at the same time, Netflix is getting way more involved and they've got unlimited money. And, so it's just going to be an interesting.
Like Netflix and Zuffa and like a lot of it's just like working together. Like Zuffa boxing is on Paramount, but that's like the low level kind of, hey, we're just going to run a bunch of events because we're trying to build up our roster. And much like UFC, it's like, we're just going to churn out content effectively. But then Zuffa does like the bigger fights, like they did Canelo and Crawford, and now they just signed Conor Benn, and he's fighting on the Tyson Fury undercard, and that's on Netflix because the Saudis are funding those bigger fights for Zuffa, and Zuffa is kind of funding all of the smaller stuff and the shows that basically take place at the UFC Apex or the Meta Apex, whatever it's called now. So boxing's always been kind of a mess because of all the different organizations and championships and everything. And, people wanted to, not anyone who was smart, but anyone who was getting paid by Zuffa wanted to say like, oh, Zuffa is going to, fix boxing and make it better and have people under one contract and everything. And it's like, no, they've actually just they've created more revenue avenues, which is great for fighters, but they haven't actually like established any real hierarchy with this. It's still fighters are going to get paid by whoever's going to pay them the most, and they can go elsewhere. Like UFC actually has a good hierarchy because all the best fighters are in the UFC except for the guys that Dana White doesn't like, where in boxing all the best fighters are just like scattered around from everything.
Yeah, and a lot of them are sometimes like managed by the same manager, so they won't fight one another, or you can never actually get the best fighters against the other best fighters in boxing because the two camps can't agree on terms or whatever. And yeah, so boxing has always been a mess for sure. But it's not. I'm also not saying this is necessarily a bad thing, especially for the fighters themselves. I talked about it the other week about how this is an era where something like the Ali Act might actually wind up being able to be a thing in it's been a thing in boxing forever, but in MMA now also, and maybe even more prevalent. Because I think Zuffa is probably trying to do away with the idea of the Ali Act through boxing because they want to sign fighters to their organization and have a hierarchy, like you just mentioned, so they can promote their own fights, have their own titles, and that whole thing. So they can regulate and they can do that all themselves under one banner, which makes sense if you're the UFC or you're Zuffa. You want to do that. It's in your best interest as a company to do that stuff, but it's in the best interest of the fighters to stay free agents if the opportunities and options are like, now Netflix has this type of money and this person has this type of money, that person has this type of money, this country, that country, you know, that's just, it's just an interesting time because I just feel like there's going to be more and more fighters who are just going to test the idea of being a true free agent, a true independent, basically a true independent talent, and just pick and choose, you know, sign one fight deals depending on who is essentially willing to pay you the most money to fight on whatever platform they're affiliated with, which once again has always kind of been a thing in boxing. It's just, we're just in this new era now with the streaming where the money is just insane. Like there's always been a lot of money in boxing, obviously, but nothing like what we're seeing happening now with these TV deals and these streaming rights deals and stuff. So it's just a whole new game now. Like if you were a top, I said it last week, if you're a top level MMA fighter, you probably don't want to totally burn your bridge with Dana White in the UFC because it is still the premier organization for MMA. But if you have real value, if you have real name value and a real fan base behind you, now is when you would want to talk to Netflix or another option and just see what's available, because you might be able to make, I mean, even companies like the PFL, the reason, you know, Kayla Harrison stayed in the PFL as long as she did, it was lower competition, but she was getting paid $1 million every time she won one of those tournaments. And it was like, that's a great option if you're a fighter just trying to make money. Like if you don't care about being known as like the quote unquote best or in the best organization, and you're doing this as a prize fighter for money, which at the end of the day really is what it's all about. You know, you've had options like that before, but yeah, $1 million. You know what's cool? It's like in the Social Network. It's like, you know what's cooler than $1 million? $1 billion. It's like, yeah, like winning $1 million in the PFL is cool. Netflix might give you 5 times that amount of money to fight for them. You know what I mean? So it's like it's just really interesting time for combat sports with the amount of money that they're willing to throw behind these matchups.
Yeah.
So,
all right, Jensen. Anything else?
I don't know if this is true. Do you see the most recent comment from them? Graphics says something about Santos Escobar being moved to the alumni page. Don't know if that's. I've not seen anything about that, but let's see.
I can look at it right now.
Alumni. Or are we getting trolled? Let's find out. Let's find out live right before we leave.
I mean, he's been in AAA, so.
Yeah, I don't know if this would really be an indication of anything anyways, but
he's not on the main roster page, but I don't know if he ever was returned to the main roster page because he was moved to the alumni section briefly when his contract expired. And I don't know, but he re-signed pretty quickly. And I don't know if he ever was returned back to the main roster page because I don't check it that often. I don't pay attention enough to those kind of things.
That's fair.
Yeah, but he's not on the main roster page. If you know, the WWE website sucks and takes forever to like load through, but I'm going through to see if he's popping up here on the. Yeah, he is on the alumni page, but I don't know if he was ever not on the alumni page. And he hasn't been back in WWE. He's just been back in AAA. So I'd have to look a little bit more on if he was ever moved off of the alumni page. That I don't know.
Okay. Fair enough. Possibly something interesting to keep your eyes on, everybody. Thank you for the chat there at the end. But yeah, that's pretty much all I've got. I think that was all of our topics, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, y'all can follow me on X at FightTalk_, and enjoy Elimination Chamber this Saturday. I'll be watching. I don't know if there's a UFC event or not. Maybe a smaller UFC show.
Yeah, UFC Mexico.
Well, there you go. I'll watch that.
Brandon Moreno is fighting on that card.
Oh, good. I like him. Former champion, good guy. Funko Pop collector as well. Little known fact. Brandon Moreno is a gigantic nerd, which I so much respect. Like I've seen videos of him doing like autograph signings, and fans. Like I saw this one a while back while he was still the champion, and some random fan walked up to him, and it was, an autograph signing where, you go up and you pay the fighter and they sign whatever, you get a picture with them. And this fan, I guess, had found out that he had been looking for a specific Funko Pop. So like, it wasn't even like a UFC related Funko or anything. It was just something he collected. And I just remember this fan walked up and was like, "Hey, I found this for you." And his reaction was like, it was like me when I opened my N64 when I was a kid. You know what I mean? It was like, "Oh man, I can't believe you got this for me. Like, thank you." Like, he was so grateful. And I think he gave him like some free pictures and autographs and stuff. But it was just, you love to see that kind of stuff. Good guys that are cool to their fans, that have genuine connections with people, that are also great fighters, have great hearts. So I'll definitely watch Brandon Moreno fight. I've been out of the loop for the most part on like what fights are all coming up since they've moved to Paramount, because now it's like the pay-per-views and the regular shows, everything's just Paramount. I just haven't been paying as much attention, but I'll and they also, this is the last thing I'll say before we leave, they changed the betting options on those recently too. I used to do the significant strikes combos. I'd take the unders on a lot of those fights, and they don't offer that anymore ever since the Paramount change, which kind of pisses me off. So I don't have as much fun watching the fights as I did before, but I'll support Brandon Moreno.
There you go. All right, Jensen, enjoy your weekend. Everyone, enjoy the wrestling that you watch this weekend, whatever it might be. We'll be back next week. I'll be back tomorrow with Joel Pearl, 10 a.m. Eastern, in the weeds. We got Luke Gallows on at 11, so that should be a very fun, interesting, enlightening conversation with Gallows. He's a ton of fun, so that'll be good. Till then, everyone, thanks for the support. Appreciate everybody. We'll talk to y'all later on.